Is retiring early even worth it? What's up everyone, David here with Free2Be, and thank you for joining me for yet another video. Now today's video is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to be talking about doing the opposite of everything I've talked about on this channel so far, and that is whether it's actually worth retiring early and pursuing that dream of financial independence. Now before we get started, as always, if you're new to my channel, I cover financial literacy here and track my progress to financial independence, and hopefully by doing that I'm creating a blueprint with valuable information that others can use. So if you are new, please take a moment and just click the subscribe button down below. It really means a lot to have your support, and hopefully by doing this I can continue to bring you guys great information. And if you're not new, thanks again for coming back. Alright, so there's this whole movement online, this FIRE movement, which means financially independent, retire early, and there's a huge movement online. There's tons of videos on YouTube about people trying to pursue this dream. But is it even worth it? Is it something that you should be going out of your way to try to achieve? Well, there's definitely certain things that you're going to have to consider, and we're going to cover those right here. And these are things like missing out on your retirement contributions, risking outliving your savings, having less Social Security income, pricey healthcare, sheer boredom, and just having limited activities with nothing to do. And in order not to miss any of this information, make sure you stay tuned for the whole video. And also, if you find it helpful, don't forget to give me a like. Okay, so the first thing to consider before you decide if retiring early is right for you is realizing and determining exactly how much you'll miss out on 401k contributions through your employer. As of today, you can contribute $19,500 annually to your 401k. Now what happens here is after the age of 50, the government actually allows you to go ahead and do catch-up contributions in the amount of $6,000. If you retire at the age of 45, you'll never get to contribute that extra $6,000 because you won't be in the workforce when you hit 50. And as we know by now, 401k contributions work exponentially and time is our ally. So it's one of those things where the more you get to put in, the better off you are when it actually comes time that you want to stop working altogether. So if you want to consider the fact that 401k portfolios typically go ahead and average about 7 to 9% annual returns, that's a lot of money that you could be giving up between the ages of 50 and 67. Now the next thing you're going to want to consider is whether you will actually end up outliving your savings. So let's say you've accumulated $3 million in cash and assets by the time you're 40 years old, and you've decided that you can live off of $100,000 a year. Well, guess what? That money will only last you about 30 to 35 years if invested properly. But what happens if you live to 85? What happens if you live to 95? What happens if you're one of the few lucky ones that actually lives well into their hundreds? And with all the advances in medicine and technology, that could really be a likely outcome. So what happens for those years? Are you going to enter the workforce again at 95? Absolutely not. Not only will you not have opportunities, you're just not going to have that same kind of vim and vigor at that age to go and pursue an actual career or any kind of income that will really help sustain a lifestyle. So you have to consider that as well. What happens if you do outlive your savings? Do you have a backup plan? So it really might not be right for you if you're thinking that you can just lump sum some cash together and then decide you want to retire at a young age. Now it goes without saying, obviously, if you set up passive incomes that will continue paying you way into retirement, then you have actually given that some thought. But it's not enough to just save up some cash and decide you're ready to retire early. Now the next impact to consider is the impact on your Social Security income when you reach retirement age. Social Security income is imputed based on your 35 highest years of earning. So if you're only in the workforce for 20 years, guess what happens with that additional 15 years? That's right, a big zero is calculated as the average earned over those 15 years, which is then averaged out among the 35 years to determine your Social Security income. And what happens is when you actually start receiving those Social Security payments, because you had a zero factored in for just as many years as you had actual income, you're going to be getting way less. So it's important to consider that as well if you're relying on that Social Security income at all. Now the next thing you're going to want to consider is the increase of medical costs as we get older. Those are going to be unexpected, and really you can't plan for those costs because they could be $10,000 or it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. We don't know what to expect as we get older. Our bodies will break down differently, and some of us will incur higher medical costs than others. And yes, insurance can cover some of that stuff, but what about all the deductibles? What about all the costs that come out of pocket? you have to plan for those, and really there's no real way to plan for it because you don't know what you're going to need. So let's say you saved up all this money and you're ready to retire at 50. Now you're going to have to pay your insurance costs out of pocket, and anything in excess of that is going to come out of those savings as well. So it's quite possible that you could run through those savings in a period of 5 years if you're dealing with a serious medical issue. And I'm not saying that we're all going to get sick and incur some crazy medical costs in our lives, but it is a possibility, so you have to be ready for that and you have to plan for it. So just thinking that you have all this money saved and you're ready to retire because you planned out the next 30, 35 years of your life is not enough. You have to think of the unexpected and plan for things that you might not know about right now, which is pretty crazy when you think about it because you can't plan for things you don't know, but that's exactly what you need to do. Now, the next factor to consider is how bored you're going to be when you retire. Do you have tons of hobbies? Are all your friends and family on the same page as you? Do you have friends and family who are living paycheck to paycheck who want to basically work until they're dead? Because if so, you're really going to be bored. If you're retired at age 40 and all your friends and family, everyone that's your age in your age group continues to work, what do you plan to do while they're at work? What is your plan for Monday through Friday? You're just gonna sit around and watch TV all day? Do you have activities planned? Do you have hobbies? Do you have interests? Are you gonna pursue other passions? Because if you don't have an answer for those, then what are you doing retiring? And it's not just the boredom, it really does impact mental health as well. If you're sitting around with nothing to do, you are going to drain your mental health to the point where it's really going to have an adverse effect on you. Think of all this social distancing we've been doing the past few months. A lot of people really have struggled with it because of the fact that they're just sitting in their homes, isolated from humans, and really can't do anything. And now think of that, but for a prolonged period of time. If you're retired at 45 and the rest of your friends and family work into their 60s and 70s, what are you going to do for the 25 years that you're by yourself? Think about it. Because it's not that easy, right? Not everyone is going to be able to accumulate enough wealth to retire early. So even if you do have a couple friends that are like-minded, maybe their ambitions and passions in retirement are completely different from yours. Maybe they plan on traveling a lot more and you don't want to necessarily do that. So you really have to take into account what your social circle around you is planning on doing and how they're basically viewing the world and retirement in general before making your own decision, because they are going to impact one another whether you like it or not. And basically, guys, remember, the key here is that retiring early isn't necessarily for everyone, okay? The FIRE movement of building financial independence and wealth is not for everyone. If you're trying to do it because you have hobbies and you have plans outside of grinding 9 to 5 every single day, then that's fine. But just make sure you have a plan. You have to have a plan in order to do anything in your life, right? And this is not an exception to that rule. So plan accordingly. If you want to retire when you're in your 40s, when you're in your 50s, plan that you'll end up living into your hundreds. And if you don't, then you don't. But at least you have a plan that you will. Plan for the best in that scenario. So when it comes to retirement, you almost have to plan for the best and the worst at the same exact time. And if you've considered all these and realized that maybe retiring early is not for you, maybe you just want to maybe scale back to 50% work when you're in your 40s and 50s, and then scale back again to, not working at all when you're in your 60s or early 70s, then maybe that's the better approach. But just think it through and make sure you have all the facts and details you need to make an informed decision. All right, guys, well, that's all I had for this video. If you enjoyed it, please let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to give me a like if you did like this video. And if you're new to the channel, please take a moment and click the subscribe button. It really does mean a lot. We'll see you next time.